Sweet world! It's Sunday, June 18th, 2023, and welcome on in to Speak Out Them Sunday, a podcast about video games and the video games economy. What's up, y'all? My name's Atham. I'm a video gamist. I play video games, and I'm pretty okay at them. During the day, I also work as an analyst. I've worked as a business economist, a data and public policy analyst, and I currently work as a financial analyst. And who knows, maybe someday a video games market analyst. Anyway, welcome into my bi-weekly show where we explore the intersection of video games, the economy, and the world around us. Join me as I talk about video games, video game news, and industry trends. Afterwards, I'll usually play something that I've talked about here on Twitch. I'll also upload the VOD to YouTube later with chapters and timestamps, so you can catch it there if it's more convenient for you. What's poppin', YouTube? I'm also up wherever you get podcasts, so if it's better for you to get me in your ear, then I'm more than happy to do that. You just search out Speak Out Them Sunday and you'll be able to find it. Today in games, I'll talk about Diablo IV, having spent quite some time with it, and I'll talk about some upcoming games that we saw in not E3 2023. Things that I'm looking forward to anyway, because it's too difficult to stay on top of every single thing that's out there. There was a lot and it was really disjointed. In news, Sony is at least skeptical, and publicly is at least skeptical of the cloud. Activision, Blizzard, and Microsoft are kind of pushing through, irrespective of whatever the FTC might try to do. And Embracer announces some layoffs or expected restructuring, which implies layoffs. And yeah, after the show, I'll pop open some Diablo, and we'll keep pushing my Druid most likely. And also, thanks, Rena. I appreciate that. So yeah, let's talk games. First up, it's Diablo IV, right? It's now out in full release as of the beginning of this month. I think June 5th. On all consoles, PS4, PS5, Xbox One, X and S. Well, I guess not Switch, and also not Mac, because there's an article out there. There's Whoopi Goldberg is trying to get her money back. Whoopi Goldberg bought Diablo 4 and then found out that it doesn't run on Mac, and now she's like really angry and trying to get her money back, which is kind of hilarious. So yeah, this is the action role-playing game, the fourth in the series. In terms of a little plot summary, you have Lilith, who is the mother of Sanctuary, out there just messing up Sanctuary, the world that the humans live in, and you, main character in your world, are going to follow a series of quest lines to stop her. Like really broad strokes of the lore leading up to it, or at least what's relevant to this kind of twisted story, is that there's an archangel named Inarius, a former archangel of the high heavens, who grew disillusioned with conflict between angels and demons, and so he sought to create a realm free of their influence. So Inarius conspired with Lilith, who shared that vision of breaking free from the rigid hierarchy of hell. And so they created Sanctuary, the world that humans now live in. Though when humans were born, they were called Nephilim, and they were actually quite powerful. Over time, I guess some of them got quite weak. And so, when you play these, usually, at least since Diablo 2, there's always some sort of old guy or some character that's express purpose is to guide you through this game. In Diablo 2, that was Deckard Cain. In Diablo 3, it was Deckard Cain until he died. And then you thought it was going to be Leah, and then also she died. So, but in this game, it's Lorath, a character named Lorath. He showed up in Diablo 3, Reaper of Souls, as like some NPC. I think he was a guard. And he's famously known for like the one dialogue piece that he has in camp, where there's another character named Tyrael. Tyrael was an angel but becomes a human and becomes immortal, and Tyrael's trying to figure out what's with all this mortal stuff I have to eat. What is this? And anyway, there's a whole thing there. But Loreth is now old, and he's a Horadric scholar, and he's kind of with you in tandem as you chase Lilith around, trying to figure out what the hell she's up to and how to stop her. I'll gloss over some of the system stuff because I think I've talked about them before, but let's start with skills. You've got skills. You have a whole skill tree, but you're only limited to 6 skills that you can use at a time. And your skill tree choices, they're not permanent. It costs you something like 1% of your gold to take a point out. So you're more than likely going to be constantly shuffling things around in your tree until it feels right, or to help you deal with whatever situation you're in, challenge you're in. Health potions also change up in this game compared to previous iterations and Diablo 3. You're not going to be managing a stock of health potions. They're a pickup. And so your max charges will be something like 4 when you start out. I think as you keep playing, you'll unlock some charges. So I think right now I have like 6 after playing for quite some time. In encounters, basically, whereas in D3 it used to be just kind of you'd have a chance for a health globe to drop. Health potions will drop as if they're health globes, but if you pick it up, it'll recharge a stack. In your kind of on your bar there, you'll have stacks of health potions, right? Charges that sit there. There's a dodge now. One, I think, every 5 seconds. And so boots can drop with modifiers on them that add an additional charge. So you can have 2 dodges on a 5-second cooldown. And so, think about how Souls games kind of do that. Give you a dodge on the circle button and give you some sort of iframes or invincibility frames as you try to dodge through whatever badness is happening. So like in Diablo 3, there was plenty of bad stuff that would happen after an enemy died, or stuff that they wanted you to walk out of, basically, or use your movement skills out of. In this game, there's a lot more of that because they've given a tool for you to deal with that, and they expect you to use it to deal with all kinds of challenges that they throw at you. So you'll particularly notice it in boss encounters because there'll be a bunch of tricky stuff that they throw at you, where you need to recognize it, and you're supposed to remember I can slam my space bar and get out of this instead of just standing here and eating it. So yeah, definitely you utilize your dodges as much as possible before you have to chug a potion, because the other thing with some of the boss encounters is that there's not a lot of health potion drops. So you have to use all the tools in your toolkit. There's also entirely new mechanics to builds, a few of which I've found interesting. So two to mention, there's one new stat called Lucky Hit, which gives you some sort of baseline chance to score a lucky hit. And this can be boosted by items and skills, and then certain skills have like specific things that can trigger that will do something on a lucky hit or give you extra lucky hit chance, and so on. The second one is overpower, and that's like, in games in general, I'm sure you've heard of critical hit chance, and that'll just do more damage, right? Overpower is kind of just like another type of critical hit, but whereas in this game where crits are like you can tell by the big yellow number, overpower you can tell by a big blue number, and if the overpower hit itself crits, which it can do, then that's the big orange number that'll show up. But what overpower does is it scales with another new stat called fortify. What fortify does is it sits on top of your health, basically. It works with a percentage of your maximum health, and skills will give you this base. It's like a defensive buff, basically. And so it can open up build options for you to where you want to actually stack defense, but the more that you stack defense, the more that you stack fortify, the more damage you'll do when you get overpower. And then there are skills similar to Lucky Hit that can be customized to give you increased overpower chance or does something special on overpower in that kind of way, right? So the druid has something like that where, you know, every 15 seconds you'll get a guaranteed overpower with one of the bear skills. Necromancer has a very, very similar thing. Every 15 seconds you'll get overpower with a blood skill, and some of the like even some of those skills look very similar to some of the druid stuff. So yeah, which is one of the gripes that I have with some of the skills in this game, but I'll come to that later. They promised nonlinear gameplay, and you know what? They delivered on nonlinear gameplay. You know, my preferred playstyle in this is just to explore. You don't have an overlay map. You do have a mini map, and you do have a map that you can open, and you can place pins on the map too. And when you do place a pin on the overworld, it will kind of draw this nice red line that takes you directly from point A to point B. Though it doesn't do that in dungeons for you. So dungeons you have to explore for yourself. Anyway, so back to quests. Quests can be tackled in any order, and there's a whole multitude of side quests and short text kind of sprinkled in the world. But back to the skills, you know, I'm not sure that it's reasonable to want everything to be brand new and unique in a fourth series of a game. So like I get that there would be some kind of carryover or at least references to old or callbacks to old skills. But you know, like my eyes kind of glazed over when I was playing my druid and I realized that, oh hey, like this wolf skill that I'm using is pretty much identical to a monk skill that I used in Diablo 3, or this human form, I have a cyclone ability that is the exact same as the cyclone ability that was the monk skill in Diablo 3. Or, you know, the bear form has a steroid type of ability that is the exact same as the ultimate ability from Diablo 3 for the monk epiphany or something like that. But then on the other hand, if you're playing something like a barbarian or a necromancer, two things that have shown up regularly in all of the well, from Diablo 2 onwards anyway, and these are some things that are familiar, and you probably enjoy that because of the nostalgia. But I'll say now, if you are thinking of playing a necromancer, just drop the minions. Don't use them. They suck. I've tried. They're bad. Just go blood or go shadow. You'll have a much better time. Or actually, you can even go bone for crits, but just don't do minions. Just sacrifice them. So yeah, the skills, right? So the skill tree itself, it's organized into 7 nodes. The first node is going to give you generators. The second one's going to be for spenders. The third one is going to be for some sort of class specific ability. So for necromancer, it's like a corpse explosion or bone abilities. The fourth node will give you a special class active ability. For necro, it's curses. And then the fifth one will give you some more specific or class specific abilities, usually on a longer cooldown. The sixth one is your ultimate ability, and those are on really long cooldowns. And then finally, the last node that you'll pick from will give you a keystone or a key passive that will change kind of how your specific type of skills, interacts with all the other skills. So for the necro, you can pick either to specialize in bone or blood or shadow or minions. But what ends up happening is that some of the skills just end up being inconsequential in the end, and it feels like some classes feel like their builds aren't viable at all, or feel that they're a bit cookie cutter. Like it almost feels like you figured out the pre-configuration that they wanted you to get to in the end, and that stuff can be annoying, especially if you want to be creative with like, oh yeah, I'm gonna mix and match these things and it's gonna work, because it won't. And there will be better things for you to do. And that was my experience with the necro. It's like, yeah, I'm gonna mix like blood and shadow, and that'll be just you go one way, because that's basically, they're intended to kind of work together, is the way it feels. The though some other classes at the same time have been designed with like the idea that you will mix stuff. So I feel like for the druid, it's intended that you're going to be mixing things. And so I've been able to find better kind of configurations in there that work and satisfy my need to just kind of do my own thing and feel good about it. Yeah. Back to the necro thing, it's one thing I think they really need to fix is with the shadow stuff. There's a core ability in the shadow tree, which is corpse explosion, and you can modify it to do shadow damage. But the pool that it drops is this pure black pool of shadow that overlaps every single other thing that's going on in the game. And if you do that enough, and there's a ton of corpses that spawn after you kill things, the entire ground, you can't see it. Nobody can. It's not even like unique to your own screen. It's not only like your it's not a you issue. It's you're causing the issue for fucking everyone. And that's a real problem because, in these games, especially later on, if you can't see an effect that's happening and you get hit by it, that can be a one-hit kill. Like that can be instant death, and you fail. And so that alone completely removes an entire type of build from viability. And I think that's absolutely ridiculous. So that, I don't know, like other people have complained about this online. I've not seen blue posts, or I've not seen any sort of like indication that they're going to do anything about it. But that's something I'd say that absolutely needs to get fixed. Anyway. And yeah, there's some like minor bugs that I've experienced with the way that the phasing stuff works in the world. There are multiple zones on the map, and you're constantly phasing in and out of them. And so, I mean, I don't know exactly how it works, but I imagine that as you're swapping through one zone to another, if you're not changing servers, there's some sort of communication handshake that's happening between your game, your client, and their servers. And if that handshake messes up and doesn't happen, then you're kind of stuck running into an invisible wall and rubber banding around. And so you kind of have to you stop and you port back to town and you go through your portal again and hope that it makes the handshake correctly, so that you can keep going. Usually that's enough to fix it. But one of the major gripes that I have with this game is the multiplayer, but not the multiplayer that I thought that I'd be complaining about. So I thought that I'd be complaining about, world boss this, or random multiplayer guy dropping on me that, but that hasn't been an issue for me. And mind you, I haven't actually been to world bosses since the beta. But I mean, judging from my experience with that beta, and in general, what I think about world bosses anyway, I don't really care. But really what I haven't enjoyed with this game is how it handles multiplayer with parties when you're trying to band together and experience this world. In some situations, there's a limited amount of time for you to experience a quest cutscene or a dialogue. If someone has clicked it, so then you very quickly become lost in what the hell is going on in the story, and you have to start asking your friends like, what did you see? Because I didn't see shit. Other situations, the cutscenes are completely not even available to you. You have zero access to them if someone else touches it. And yeah, I mean, the other thing is that in other situations where you click on it, so like let's say somebody in your party has clicked on an NPC to advance a quest, everybody else in the party will get a prompt on their screen that's telling them to accept or leave the party, basically. And it's on a timer, so if you don't click it fast enough, you just get kicked from the party. That's it. And then one time, I remember one time that happened to us while we were playing, and we couldn't reform the party. Like we actually had to leave the game, disconnect from the servers and right, like leave the game instance and then rejoin and then reform, which is just a mess. So yeah, like it all of that together, basically what it ends up meaning is that if you're trying to experience what the game is trying to offer in terms of the narrative experience, that the narrative that it's trying to tell, you're better off playing it solo, right? And so that's where I like it to me, like, it almost says to me that they tackle things in this order. They said, first of all, let's make sure that it works as a good solo experience, because that's what Diablo fans want, they largely expect. And so and also that's also a large portion of how we're going to be judged when we send these things out for review before the game releases. And there's not going to be any multiplayer with that. All the people before the game released who have dropped the review that says, oh, this game's 9 out of 10, have played it completely completely solo, and have, like, in some cases said that caveat that, oh yeah, by the way, we didn't play any of this multiplayer because we couldn't, because it wasn't out yet, and there was no multiplayer testing in our early build. And then, so that's the first thing. The second thing is that let's make sure that there are ways for social interaction in multiplayer. If not verbally, then at least make that visual, or make that through emotes. And it's a critical component of for us, because it's a critical part of our monetization strategy, right? Like you, if this game was a purely solo experience, you couldn't really have a cash shop that was selling you cosmetics, because who the hell are you going to show it to? So you need to make it multiplayer so that there are people to show it, so that you can sell them the stuff. And especially you need to have PvP as well, because if people are styling on you in PvP, then you got to have, like, a cool ass skin to say, hey, you know, fuck you, buddy. Anyway. And then, so the third thing that I think, like, in that order, the third priority was like, oh yeah, we should probably do party stuff, because I mean, some people are going to want to play in parties. Some people have friends are going to, and are going to want to play in parties together with them. So let's just make sure that we can get that done. So, you know, and all these things are fixable, and if people actually care about it enough to complain about it and write posts on forums and let them know that it's an issue, then I'm sure it would eventually get fixed. But I doubt that it's really a priority for them. So yeah, that's kind of like, that's where I'm coming from when I say that this game makes me feel like it's a solo experience that I'm forced to play multiplayer. Because it feels like that's been the first priority. Then the second one is to shoehorn in multiplayer elements so that we can fit in a cash shop. And then the very third and last thing is like, all right, well, party multiplayer, let's figure it out. I'd also recommend, there's a great article in The Atlantic called Hell Welcomes All by Spencer Kornhaber, talking about how the game is trying to balance satisfying its core fans with opening up to broader audiences. So I definitely recommend tracking that down and giving it a read. The graphic design stuff, like graphics are good. They're really good. I've talked about it before. It's like pretty spooky. It's really dark. And there's very little variance to how those colors kind of present. So it can end up being like a kind of monotonous type of, there's very little variance in the presentation, but what they do present, they do really detailed, and they do wet things really well. like this game is wet. This game gets wet. Wet textures look amazing, and the sweat looks really good too. So yeah, it's they deserve a lot of credit for creating a world that does not require anything from you outside of the front flat fee for the game. The standard edition will run you $70 US to $90 Canadian. And while that is expensive, and it certainly feels expensive to us because we, universally our wages are not growing, have not been growing as fast as inflation grows. And so, and at the same time, the sellers are like kind of saying, our development costs are going up and up and up, and we can't seem to raise this price any higher because the market won't bear it. The people aren't making crazy amounts more of money. And so that's why, there's such a pressure to look for other ways to monetize. I mean, there's also corporate greed, but anyway, it's they still deserve credit for creating something that even at the base game, even if you don't go in for any of the battle pass stuff, you don't go in for any cosmetics or anything like that, you will have a good time and it will look good and it will function, and you won't be kind of left out in the cold there. But we'll see what the battle pass stuff does have to offer, though, in terms of new content, or whether there will be free updates for new content. We know there's supposed to be new content, but we'll have to see how that goes, because that will be important to see the long-term viability of the game. Because if they want this to be like something that's going to provide a continual kind of revenue stream over time, they need to have eventually, like, they need to have some pretty consistent new content drops. So it's a great game that's worth the price. In the end, it has replay value. There's a ton of classes for you to check out and many builds to try. Seasonal ladders also promise a lot of refresh to shake things up a bit anyway. There are new mechanics too, lucky hit and overpower, and so if you're someone that's coming from previous games, there's a ton of new stuff for you to check out. I think, unfortunately, some of the skills end up being inconsequential, and some of the classes can feel cookie cutter, or just flat out not viable in some of the stuff because of just weird design choices. And the multiplayer could absolutely use some work, especially the party co-op multiplayer stuff. But the core game feels good and is worth the price. So yeah, we'll see what the future offers for that. That's Diablo IV. The only other thing I had here is SGF, Summer Games Fest, or Summer Game Fest, and just what I'm gonna generally call not E3. It was kind of a exhausting, disjointed affair from June 8th to June 12th. I think on June 7th, the Guerrilla Collective did a bunch of indie trailers, and then on the 13th, Xbox did a extended showcase. It was super hard to keep track of all the events and to keep on top of all the announcements and trailers. But I did note down some of the things that I'm interested in, and I thought looked cool. And so let's dive into that, starting with Mortal Kombat 1, MK1. So Mortal Kombat is rebooting as MK1, but not remaking. It's developed by NetherRealm Studios, published by Warner Brothers Games. It's going to be the 12th installation of the series, and the sequel to Mortal Kombat 11, which came out in 2019. This is the second reboot that the franchise has done. One key feature that's going to be here in this game is cameos, with a K. And this is kind of reminiscent of Marvel vs. Capcom or Dragon Ball Fighter Z, assist characters that you could kind of call in to do an attack or maybe a few attacks, and then they kind of fuck off. They kind of just like leave, right? Yeah, so they showed a bunch of trailers. There was also some footage from some of the demos that I was able to see during that not E3 week. It looks beautiful. It looks really high fidelity. The combos, the animations look really chunky and blocky. And that's the style. That's the MK style. But I love the little touches that are there around how the camera pans and how time slows when you're pulling off a big move. And there's just these different things that they've done to make it a kind of cinematic feel as you're playing the game. But it's gory. As far as I know, there's no less gore option either. So the fatalities can be pretty bloody. You get like X-ray views into people's bones breaking and cracking and fracturing. You get, you'll see blood and guts as people get ripped apart in their fatalities, which, I guess is par for the course for Mortal Kombat. So, if you're into all of that, then it's there for you. If you're a bit squeamish, there's there's no way around it. Except to look away, because there's nothing. They've said nothing about less gore or anything like that. Which, it's. I guess you could argue for it in terms of a quote unquote accessibility option. You could also argue for it and just say, hey man, those people that are a bit squeamish and might actually check out your game, but for this thing, if you would just put an option that was less gore, you might access a whole bunch of new people. So if it's to the extent that doesn't cost you a whole lot to do and is very easy for you to implement, then maybe you want to do that, because you might draw in more customers. And anyway, more on that later, but that seems to be a common trend, right? Like all of these, especially in fighting games, they're trying to figure out how might we access more audience, because the audience that we have is aging. And like, on the one hand, we need to make it easier for them to play these games. On the other hand, if to the extent that they're leaving the market, we need to find new ways to replace them. And if you have a really like super hard fighting game that's tough to get into, you're not going to attract new people to it. It's not going to happen. So yeah, that's like kind of one trend that I see going on there. The cameos can also do fatalities, by the way. So you can have, there's a multitude of them that come from all over the MK universe. I think like the story will rationalize it by, saying, I don't know, some like different realms within the world, whatever. But that's happening. There was an IGN poll that I looked at when they were IGN did. There was an article there talking about the game trailer and all of that. So there was some 5,300 respondents on that, asking whether people were excited for the reboot, and that kind of gives an indication of what the demand looks like. And so 63% of that poll said that the reset or the reboot will be refreshing, and they're excited for it. 3% said that they hadn't played MK, but a reboot would be a fun time to try. 10% said they will play, but would rather have seen a normal sequel. 15% are on the fence, depending on what is shown between now and launch. And 8% say that, no, Mortal Kombat is not for us. And that's like, I don't know, there's maybe some funky wording on the questions there that might end up mixing some categories, but that I fall in that 63%, and there's quite a few people that feel that it's that a reset will be refreshing for MK. I was also able to catch a behind the scenes interview that one video game journalist, Jeff Gerstmann, did with Ed Boon, the creative director at NetherRealm, on this project, and the co-creator of Mortal Kombat. And so in that interview, they talked about the development of the new Mortal Kombat game, including the decision to switch to a new graphics engine and the challenges of integrating it with their existing fighting game engine. The inclusion of obscure characters and the reintroduction of other characters. The use of the Mortal Kombat realm to explore different time periods, and what they're trying to do, which is to establish a new foundation for this game, and trying to widen the appeal to new players. And then he also opened up to possibilities in the future of revisiting old modes or gameplay modes that existed in previous sequels or in previous entries to the franchise. And so they've integrated a new graphics engine into their fighting game. It's using Unreal Engine 5, and this required their team to wire in a new suite of tools into their existing system. And this created a really heavy workload. Adding to that workload, they included a large number of characters in this new Mortal Kombat game, including obscure ones and different cameo characters. And that added on to the workload because there needed to be new fatalities for each cameo character to be developed. And also, the game will feature 2 character super moves and 2 character throws. And so you need to develop all of that depending on what cameo is paired with who. It's so the story will be set in kind of contemporary time period in the real world, our contemporary time period, but the realm will allow for exploration of different time periods. And so they've done that to say that, yeah, you can be in the current world where you have like a movie star, a flipping movie star, but that you can go into the past and have, a really old ancient martial artist or whatever the hell it is. The other thing to note here, though, when they were talking about is that, there are some fans that would rather see an injustice. And so they were talking about how, to the amount of load that they had to integrate MK meant that, or implement the new engine meant that they had to put Injustice on hold, basically. But that in the future, now that they've done a bunch of groundwork to integrate a new engine, then they might be able to leverage that for their future projects. So yeah, the other thing to mention is that there are modern controls. So just like how Street Fighter 6 has done that, and that really works really well, Mortal Kombat will be looking to do that as well. Modern controls which acknowledge accessibility, allowing more people to enjoy the game. And that's a good thing for the fighting game genre because it brings more people into the fold. And it broadens the appeal to a wider audience. Yeah. So yeah, done. That's it. Sorry, I was just looking at my notes here. If there's anything else? Oh yeah, no. So they're doing another kind of pre-order advanced access thing. But yeah, it was there for. So like I've been noticing this as well, more and more, is that some of these companies they'll obviously charge more and they'll give you advanced access to your game. And so what ends up happening is that if you're like a really super fan of the series, you'll be like, hell yeah, I want to play this game earlier. And I have money, I have disposable income, so I'll let's do that. But then what ends up happening too with that is that you're a premium fucking beta tester, basically, or like last minute tester to make sure that everything is working as intended. So anyway, that's going to be available. I will not sign up for that, but it'll be out. It's set to release anyway on September 19th, 2023. And so, yeah, it probably will be something that I at least check out, but we'll see. It's looking to be a busy September. The next thing that I looked at was Fae Farm. So they did this, they put out a trailer at SGF 2023 where they announced a PC version to come along with the Switch version, which is really nice because my Switch is kind of functionally dead. And I've basically gutted the battery unintentionally. So yeah, that, it's here, but I can't really use it. And even if I was to use it, it would be kind of like it's firmly docked in there. The second I take it out of the dock, it immediately dies. So yeah, this is developed and published by Phoenix Labs, a Vancouver-based firm. It's, as Jeff Keighley put it, a cozy farm sim, and a new entry into the cozy farm sim genre. It's reminiscent of Animal Crossing, Stardew Valley, and it makes me think of Harvest Moon, a game that I've spent a lot of time in. It uses the Unreal Engine, and they have kind of Epic logo on there, an Unreal logo on their trailer there. and it looks like there are seasons, but not battle pass stuff, like actual seasons, right? So there's going to be, it's a whole bunch of systems, but there's going to be obviously a seasons system there, because if you're into farming stuff. But there's also exploration of a world. There are some systems for magic. It doesn't look like there's platforming, but there is some sort of like puzzle solving stuff from just judging from the trailer. It's got this kind of like cartoon Fantasia look to the art. The enemy design looks cool, looks cute, and quite varied. Like there's some combat, though I haven't seen a whole lot of it. I did see. Man, there's some YouTuber. I don't know. We'll see if I can find it in here. Yeah, it's here. The Cozy Gamer Cat on YouTube had like about 45 minutes of gameplay that they were able to get access to early. And so I skimmed through that because I was looking it up. I found it. And through that, I saw that there's character customization. There are body types. There are skin colors. You can really project yourself onto the character, which I think it's very welcome, and I think that's absolutely fantastic. Yeah, like I skimmed through that thing. I didn't take a kind of deep dive into it because I want to play this game, so I don't want to spoil it for myself too much. But from what I did see, combat even seemed to be intricate because there was enemy variety, and there was like enemies had different attack patterns, and so it's not simply a matter of like walking up to something and smacking it. You actually have to, like, there will be telegraphs of enemy moves, and you'll have to get it to walk out of the way, or it's going to jump on you now, maybe you should get out of that stuff. And there's it appears to be stamina and magic on top of your health bar as well. So there's some sort of something going on there with magic as well. So yeah, we'll see where that goes. I mean, if you hang around PC gamer crowds long enough, you'll hear a whole bunch of negativity for games like this. You'll hear, oh, another one of these, or like, oh, do we need another one of these, and all that kind of nonsense. But I say, like, whatever the fuck, man. If it's not for you, move on. It's your loss. But and I don't want to hear it. But I will be checking this out, and I'm more stoked now that I see that it's coming to PC because, as I say, my Switch is pretty much defunct. So this is out September 8th this year, September 8th, 2023. And so September is kind of looking like MK and Fae Farm month. And that takes us to the next thing that I saw that I thought was interesting anyway, which is the Prince of Persia, The Lost Crown, which a Metroidvania entry to the Prince of Persia series. This is the latest installment, or going to be the latest installment in Prince of Persia, which has been around since 1989. It's that franchise is known for platforming and puzzle solving gameplay, as well as time manipulation mechanics. And so Ubisoft Montpellier is the studio behind this, and they're also responsible for Rayman Legends and Beyond Good and Evil 2. So release date is January 18th, 2024. It's still... Oh, right. And it has kind of this like semi-open world design that players can explore to their own pace and discover secrets as they go, and so on. It reminded me... I recently played Blasphemous, and so it reminded me of that when I was watching it. They're not entirely similar. They're similar in that they're Metroidvanias, but one is way more gory and kind of grotesque than the other. And also Blasphemous 2 is coming on August 24th this year. But yeah, this Prince of Persia game looks really cool. I saw some extended gameplay footage as well. It looks like they've taken a Metroidvania style of game. They've overlaid their Prince of Persia time mechanics on top of it, or have integrated that in with it. And then they've added a whole bunch of combat mechanics to boot. Like there's bows for range stuff. There are a whole bunch of dashes, movement options. There are super attacks akin, like as if it was a fighting game. The boss encounters look like big and intricate. The bosses that they did show were like massive kind of beasts that kind of force you into positions of using your entire toolkit. From that gameplay stuff I saw, if people were failing is because they were like too beholden to the one particular thing that they were doing, or like the one particular tool they were using, but they had access to a whole bunch of other things that they should have been using and need to be using to succeed at that point in the game. There's also it looks like there's a bonfire type of, or like shrine type of system, right? So as you go, you'll unlock these save points, and presumably you'll be able to heal there. And also presumably later on you'll be able to teleport around to make it easier for you to travel around the game world. January 18th, 2024 on Switch, PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Xbox X and S. The next thing, which was a major thing, was Starfield. So Bethesda Game Studios introduces Starfield, which is going to be their first universe in over 25 years. It's the Bethesda RPG set in space, where players can explore over 1,000 worlds with unlimited possibilities. They've got a next-gen kind of lighting model with like a lot of rays will be traced. They've got an all-new animation system, and they've got all kinds of new stuff going on with their skills and inventory and systems. You will be able to take companions on you and crew with your on your journey there. And they're calling kind of the design style NASA punk, which combines like the advanced technology, like advanced space technology that you'd kind of associate with NASA, with slightly more retro and analog touch. So yeah, that's the thing. You'll be able to plot a course through different star systems, and you'll be able to upgrade your ship, build your ship, upgrade your ship, and select skills, and develop skills and pick and all kinds of stuff. The game's story revolves around Constellation, which is a group of explorers trying to find answers to humanity's biggest questions, which is adding some sort of sense and direction and purpose to the game. Yeah. So, and it's set in different star systems, as they say, like over 1,000 or something like that. So that's kind of big. It's quite big. It's quite expensive, and I hope in a way that's not overwhelming. You'll be able to build and captain your own spaceship, which will get kind of interesting because you can build all kind of weird things. So I think in the like showcase or whatever, the direct, whatever they called it, they showed like they built a platypus or something like that. Like you can make it into all kinds of weird shapes. I think I saw a mech at some point in either in that direct or in another trailer or whatever it was, something that resembled like a clunky Gundam that they were trying to go for, and which is kind of funny. And it's kind of like, man, it kind of makes me want to play just for that, just to see what I can do with that kind of stuff, and see how it fares in combat, because there will be ship combat, there'll be like space combat, although you'll be able to like dock or board other people or other non-playable characters' ships, because it is a solo game. So yeah, like what happens if you're piloting a big clunky Gundam and you're getting shot at from all sides, but you're not really maneuverable? Do you just like try to dock at that point? Those kind of questions come up, but we'll see. The other thing that they showed is that it has kind of a really highly detailed and diverse character creation system. They scanned a wide range of faces from different age groups and from different ethnicities, and so by mixing and matching all of that data, they're able to create diverse characters in the world. And then they use that exact same system to develop or to generate all the non-playable characters that will show up in the world. And so a character that you will create in this world will look like any other characters in the world that have been generated using that system, which is cool, right? That just kind of like builds in the immersion. You can see yourself in the game, and you can see other things in the game that look like yourself in the game. There's a unique planet building system that will generate different environments within the planets for players to explore. And so, it's like they're talking about there's like some level of randomization that's going to happen to where when you get on a planet, you're gonna be getting a different experience every time. Though some of the animals, like from what we saw, looked kind of weird. Like, I don't know how to put it. It's like they just seemed like just monsters more than just like, I just want to see like regular animals. But anyway, and there's a variety of weapons and mods. Combat is more dynamic than in previous Bethesda games, and there's also day-night cycle and a photo mode and all kinds of like special little things thrown in there. No doubt that it's a high level of effort on this game. I think the thing that you worry about with all of the Bethesda games is just what's the level of polish going to be like when it actually comes out. And are there going to be any game breaking bugs? Are there going to be bugs that kind of like pull you out of the having the best time, let's say? And I mean, Bethesda have been known for their own brand of bugs because of just the size and scale of things that they go for. But this time around anyway, they're getting out in front of that and saying that they have QA that's doing a whole bunch of testing. They're doing a whole bunch of bug tracking and fixing. So we'll have to wait and see. It is Game Pass day one, which is huge for Game Pass and huge for me because I'm a Game Pass subscriber and I wouldn't want to spend $70 on this game or whatever it is that they're asking. 70 US, 90 US, 90 Canadian it would be for me. So yeah, we'll see what that looks like when it comes out. Did they give a release date? I think they did. Let's see. I didn't write it down here. September 6th, 2023 is September, man. September's going to be a crazy month. So the next thing, Plucky Squire. So this is developed by a new studio. It's called All Possible Futures, founded by Australian Jonathan Biddle, known from Swords of Ditto and Stealth Bastards, and James Turner, who is a Pokemon designer and art director on Pokemon Sword and Shield. This is going to be published by Devolver Digital, who also did their Devolver Digital showcase and was really weird. That Devolver Digital showcase is like they had their own story to tell with their weird little mascot, and the games like almost the games almost seemed like a sideshow to the story that they wanted to tell, which I don't understand it. Anyway, that was the thing. If you watched it too, then you know what's up. So yeah, Plucky Squire. It's billed as a tale of adventure and heroism in a magical land, where Jot, the main character, and Jot's friends protect their realm from the villainous sorcerer Humdrum, I think is the name. So yeah, basically this game is taking place in a storybook. Is where you're controlling this character, but as you go through, you're in these 2D puzzle combat sequences, and then the gameplay can completely change and shift. So the trailer shows like some sort of punch out type of thing that happens. It shows some side-scrolling shooting type of action, and then it shows you come out of the storybook and transfer into kind of a more 3D environment, where you're in the room where that book is open, and then there's more kind of platforming and combat stuff that happens in those environments. And so the idea is, as you're going around room, and like a room has objects like any room does, there's this mug, but if you're in Plucky Squire, you can start from a book, you can pop out into the real world, you can run around, and then you'll have to pop into this mug and run around the diameter of the mug, and then pop back out and keep going. So yeah, it's really colorful, it's really cute, and it's really interesting with whatever it is that they're trying to achieve there in terms of their gameplay mechanics. So that I will be definitely checking out. No release date, but it's slated for 2023. So the next thing that I have here on my list, it is Warhammer Space Marine. So another Warhammer game, Warhammer Space Marine 2, in fact. It seems quite interesting. It's so the SGF trailer revealed that it has 3-player co-op, and the 4th player be damned. When I look at this game, I can't help but think of the StarCraft Marine versus Zerg. When looking at this, although I know full well that Warhammer 40k and the Warhammer Space Marine came first, I just guessed that the prototypical StarCraft Marine is probably inspired by the Warhammer 40k Space Marine. So they showed off quite a bit of gameplay footage for that minute and a half, but there's not a lot of commentary to go off of. So we're left to a bit of speculation. It's revolving around the story is revolving around the confrontation with the Tyranids, which is a relentless and dangerous alien species. It's like horde type of combat because you're up against these Xenos or whatever. And I'm not familiar with the Warhammer thing. You think of this game, you can't help but when Tinker James in chat says that when they think of this game, they can't help but think of time for a hair booster commercial. So it continues the story of, I don't know, Captain Titus is that guy that you're playing, and the Ultramarines as they battle against the Tyranids. It's the sequel to the 2012 game out there. Release date, it's set for 2023. It's Xbox, X and S, PS5, PC. Saber Interactive is the studio that's developing this. They're a Florida-based developer and publisher, and it'll be published by Focus Entertainment, which is a France-based publisher. So yeah, I don't know. It's really super aggressive marine space stuff. So if that's your thing, that's your thing. I might fall for it, but strictly from a perspective that I think it's cool to pretend that I'm in the StarCraft universe beating up on Zerg as a Marine. Like if this was a Blizzard game and you were actually in the StarCraft universe, I would be beyond sold. But anyway, that's another story, I suppose. I think there's just one more that I have here, which is Lies of P. So this is a game that really loves Bloodborne. Basically, like I almost want to call it Ploodborne, because they so this is a game that's based in it's inspired by the Belle Époque era, which is late 1800s French, Belgian, and European history. So, like the story is basically taking Pinocchio and morphing it into Bloodborne. So you play as the puppet, as this Pinocchio that's created by Geppetto, but you've been caught in a web of lies and unimaginable monsters around this town of Crate. Offers some 30 hours of playtime and multiple endings. And so the combat experience is like if you've played Soul games before, you've seen these Souls games. If you played Bloodborne before, then you'll recognize that they have new names for things, but there are a lot of, they're just, you know, new names for familiar things. They call it Fable Arts. They call it a groggy system. They call it Perfect Guard, Legion Arm. Just, I don't know, just a whole bunch of stuff. But you've basically seen all this stuff before. It's you can one thing that seems unique to the here is that you can create your own weapons, and so through weapon crafting you can create different combinations of items to create new weapons, new appearances, attack motions, and patterns, which seems interesting. So yeah, that's about it. There's a demo there. So a demo is live. So if you want to try that before it goes live, you can. It is also Game Pass day one. So if you have Game Pass, it's there for you. Release date is September 19th, 2023. We'll see. I mean, September is going to be jam-packed. I think just from a perspective that, like, I've played some Souls games. I have not played Bloodborne before. I would love if there was a Bloodborne port to PC so that I could just do that. But failing that, if some other game wants to come in and kind of take up that hole, and there are, you know, a lot of people are out there just kind of refusing to let the dream die that there might one day be a Bloodborne port to PC. Well, you might try this game instead because it seems to be delivering on that kind of thing that you're looking for. And that is it for the games and the games look ahead. So I've been going for quite some time. Let's take a break and I'll come back on the other side with the news. We'll be back. All right, y'all, we're back. And it is time for the news. So the first thing that I have here is Embracer Group. So Embracer Group announced that they have plans to close studios, cancel games, and lay off staff after their $2 billion deal fell through. This is an article from Wesley Yidenpool at IGN. Also, there's an open letter on the Embracer website that kind of announces the restructuring and that most people are going off of. I think Lars Wingefors also did like some press availability, but didn't offer too much more detail than what was already said in this letter. And so, you know, basically, if I had talked about this before, it was end of May when Embracer announced, when they were doing their quarter end kind of fiscal reporting, they had said that they had just found out that this big deal had fallen through. And so, right, like $2 billion contract deal had fell through. And so their share price took a huge hit. It seriously tanked. And so kind of, you know, after a few weeks separated from that, they've put this open letter on their website that's saying they're aiming to decrease spending, they're aiming to reduce third-party publishing, and they're focusing on internal IP and for their large budget games and external funding for their large budget games. So Embracer, their biggest or most prominent developers and publishers include things like THQ Nordic, Crystal Dynamics, and Gearbox. And notable upcoming games for them will be Remnant 2, Warhammer 40k, Space Marine 2, I think, although that's Focus might be underneath Embracer, and Payday 3. But despite the restructuring, it seems that the Tomb Raider project and Perfect Dark will be unaffected, and that makes sense. Like because basically what's going on here is they're saying, okay, well, I guess we don't really. They're probably coming under pressure from their investors, and now they're getting into a place where they're saying, okay, well, now we have to go through a thorough review process for investments in new game development projects, and we'll have to for any staff, if we decide that some projects need to be canceled, or we need to take a look at our resources and see where we need to allocate them, basically. So if there are going to be affected staff that are not getting laid off, then we need to know, but they are getting, that project that they were working on is no longer being worked on. We need to figure out where to put them, and where they can be made the most use of. And they emphasized increased focus on accountability and performance, or at least performance management in terms of setting targets and then meeting or exceeding targets. And all significant releases that have been announced will proceed. So when you go to the actual letter and you take a look at it, it's dated June 13th, and they talk about this restructuring program that will involve cost savings, capital allocation, efficiency improvements, and consolidation across the group. As a result, there will be studio closures, divestments, the termination or pausing of some game development projects, as the company aims to generate higher cash flows, lower net debt, and achieve growth in profitability with reduced business risk. And they say they embrace, or they emphasize commitment to transparency, compassion, and respect for its employees during this challenging period. So yeah, like the main things that I look at here. So you're looking to optimize growth based on your cash flows, and you're looking to have lower net debt. They mentioned cost savings, capital allocation, efficiency improvements, consolidation, studio closures, divestments, project terminations. When you look at cost savings or cost saving measures across the group, that means layoffs. But it means targeted layoffs. And probably what they'll do is they'll go line by line on their projects and their studios and their business areas, and they'll determine what's not, they'll figure out some sort of criteria to measure against, and then they'll use that to determine what's not performing up to whatever their decision-making criteria is on profitability or on cost management. And then considering any other qualitative factors that might legitimize keeping that business line or not, they'll kick that decision down to the senior managers to make, or they'll make it themselves, and they will kick the messaging down to them to pass on that, sorry, but your line has gotten cut. And so this, thorough review process for ongoing and potential new game development projects to increase accountability, to ensure performance meets or exceeds targets. This speaks to having like a standardized way, or like implementing a standardized way to review requests for budget review, to ingest pitches, to cost pitches. Because I imagine for some of these projects, at least, that they've just been kind of throwing money at them without necessarily considering, like how effective that's going to be. And so it seems to be talking about having an effective management accountability framework in place to be able to assess performance, to be able to identify issues, and then to be able to improve and resolve them and improve. And then, the other piece is that it's a good way for them to communicate to investors to say, hey, yeah, don't worry, we're having good stewardship over your funds that you have provided to us. And so the other thing here that they're saying, consolidate operations, review the group structure. I think that thing is pointing specifically towards saying, okay, well, like we've been on an absolute tear. We've been on a spree just buying up all these companies. And then we have had our stance of just anti-synergy. We're not like, we bought you, but you can just do your own thing. And we bought you, and you do your own thing, and you do your own thing, and you do your own thing. But the thing is that if you do that, you have a marketing department over here, and accounting and HR, and then you have marketing, HR, accounting here, and you have marketing, HR, accounting here. You have all these people doing the same thing, where you could probably do well to consolidate all that that like that back office stuff or that support services stuff, maybe you could probably do something with consolidation up at the higher levels in your structure. I think you will always want to retain some of your most experienced specialists in those areas in your companies, because there will always be, those people who have the best corporate memory and the best understanding of the specific needs of that company and that experience. But you don't need full staffs in each of those areas across all of the different pieces in your conglomerate. And conglomerate is a good word for them, because a conglomerate means it's just a bunch of separate parts, all over the place without really much of a view to how that goes together. And that's been their thing, right? So I think with this deal fall, it's interesting to note that the share price didn't really move much after they put out this letter, right? To me, which means to me that when that deal fell through and the price dropped, all this has been priced in to the current market price, and all of that says that deal fell apart for a reason, and that reason probably had to do with how Embracer was being managed, how they're managing themselves. And so I think they've come to a point now where they say, we need to manage this whole thing better if we're going to be able to make partnerships with people, and if we're going to be able to pull off these more deals and move in a direction. We need to decide on what our direction is, and then to be able to move in that direction, we'll need to get funding, and then then you can move forward, right? And so to do that, they just need to manage themselves better. That's what all of this is going towards, I guess. So these layoffs, they probably should have happened earlier. And we haven't even, there hasn't been any actual announcement of layoffs, but when you see that a restructuring program is coming, then you can expect that there will be some sort of layoffs to come. There's been lots of talk around them using Lord of the Rings to leverage their IP, and that's going to be their strategy going forward. And I think that's there's part of this is it's really poor timing, because that Gollum game came out and that was just bad. That developer had to come out there and apologize, not for much else, but to just say we're sorry we made a game that wasn't great, and we'll do better. But anyway, I'm not here to bash on them or on Gollum. But, what it is what I do want to mention is that, I don't believe that a strategy based around leveraging Lord of the Rings is going to move the needle, to borrow a turn of phrase from Phil Spencer there at Xbox. I think, it can be a component of what you got going on. And I'm sure if it's managed and budgeted correctly, then it can turn you a good profit, but it cannot be a pillar, because I just don't think that there's enough demand out there for that kind of genre, like that fantasy genre, and there's not enough demand out there for the series. It's the fans that do exist are fanatical at times. The people who are into it are really into it, but more and more the successful games that are out there are all finding ways to appeal to broad audiences. And I don't think you're going to get that with Lord of the Rings. I just don't. And, that, in fact, that makes me think that's basically the theme of this year to me. So you've had Zelda, Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, Breath of the Wild 2, Tears of the Kingdom. You have Starfield that's on the way. You have Street Fighter 6. You have Mortal Kombat 1. You have Diablo 4. All of these games have something in common. All of them are looking at how they can appeal to the broadest amount of people so that they can cover their ballooning development costs, and their constrained ability to set a high price on things, because a price cannot go over $70 US per copy. And so for Embracer, it's no different. They need to figure out what is going to be their thing that is going to have broad-based appeal. so that they can, that's like the path to profitability, it almost seems. So yeah, like you look at Embracer, they were already in trouble before when the deal fell through. Like I was quite hopeful. I think still, like when financial analysts look at this, they are still hopeful, or they at least look at it as a favorable kind of buy. Or they're certainly not panicking and saying get out. And yeah, it just, as I say, it looks like all of this is happening in response to the underlying reasons why that deal fell through. The focus on internal IP that might limit the diversity of product that they might have, but I think it's important for them now to really pull back and consider for them to pull back and think critically about what it is they're trying to achieve, and what games that they want to focus on to achieve that vision. And the impact on studios and the impact on employees that will be effective absolutely raises questions about the long-term viability for Embracer, and their whatever strategy they have for expansion, which I guess at this point is none. They're not expanding anymore. If anything, they're going to be divesting. And I guess that this defiant anti-synergy approach to operating is done. I think they're gonna figure out how to get some synergy and become a better managed publisher and kind of video games holding company. So that's the news piece on Embracer. The other thing that I have here is on Xbox. So Xbox is trying to turn the corner after a decade of struggle, is the article title. This is from the Washington Post by Gene Park. The Xbox brand has faced a reputation setbacks over the years, but Microsoft's investment in Starfield is expected to yield results. Starfield, developed by Bethesda Studios, highly anticipated release, promising space exploration. Xbox aims to publish its own games quarterly as part of its Xbox Game Pass subscriptions strategy. Despite recent challenges like the poor reception of Redfall and the legal battle to acquire Activision Blizzard, Xbox is confident in its upcoming releases. Xbox is focused on building quality games and expanding its audience, including attracting Japanese game publishers. So, like this, when I read this one, it goes back to trying to get broad-based appeal and trying to find different ways to get profitable. And Starfield is a huge piece of Game Pass, right? So Phil Spencer has been out there saying that no one game is going to move the needle. But to me, it's sure it's no one game, but it's like every quarter you need to have a big game that's out there, and you need to be able to do that consistently. And if you do that consistently, then your needle will move. And we'll see. I mean, it looks promising. Not only Starfield, but what they've got coming for 2024. 2023, unfortunately, seems I guess a little bit light. Like September is going to be good for them with Starfield, but like the question is what happens in the following quarter. The other kind of thing that's going on here is still like we're still talking about Activision Blizzard with this merger that's trying to still happen. I think latest update on that is that the FTC asked a judge to give an injunction to block the merge from happening because Xbox was gonna pull it off. They announced as such, and I think that judge granted it. There was a Reuters article that I read that said that the judge granted it late in the day. So we'll see. That's still kind of a moving part, and I'm sure there'll be more stuff on that in the coming weeks. I think the other thing that's interesting on that front, though, is that one thing that I had thought might happen with this stuff, depending on how these talks go, especially like one critical component is it absolutely needs to pass in the U.S. But imagine that if the only jurisdiction to block this deal is the UK, I'm starting to hear chatter about how Activision Blizzard and Microsoft might figure out a way to make it so that in the UK, the games are distributed, Activision games are distributed under some other entity. So imagine you basically remove Activision from the UK, but then you get a distributor to distribute Activision's products underneath a separate brand or whatever, and you like form a partnership with them, or you sign some sort of contract, but they're a completely separate entity. That could be something that I'm sure there's some corporate structuring that could happen, or like carve out or spin off or something could happen to try to get through the loops. It would be absolutely kind of like destroy any relationships that you have. It would be a huge middle finger, but I'm sure to get this through, they would be willing to do something like that, because it's like Xbox has kind of pushed themselves into a corner where they need to they need to get games and they need the stuff to be able to be competitive with Sony, who is the market leader. And they need to make sure that they stay abreast with Nintendo, which is where right now I put them right neck and neck with Nintendo. So we'll see. There were some other interesting statistics that came out of this. They said that Xbox had reported having over 150 million monthly active users. They also said that Game Pass subscriptions last reported was at 25 million in January 2022, but that they've taken a hit since. And have declined to update that figure, which means that it's probably decreased. Which also kind of makes sense, like really, if I was like really being on point with my management of my subscriptions, I would have probably canceled Game Pass a few months ago, basically after I'd finished doing whatever I wanted to do in Hitman, World of Assassination. I would have canceled it and waited until September when big games come out to Game Pass, and then I would have re-upped for whatever it is, and gotten what I need to get out of those games until I'm done with them, and there's no other big games, so I cancel, right? It's why a big game every quarter is critical, because that's the only way that they're gonna, they're gonna keep people on a string to keep giving them $10+ US every month. So that's the thing about Xbox. The third thing is Sony. Again, it's a small piece on Sony here. Is just an interesting article that I saw in the Financial Times. This is by Kana Inagaki and Leo Lewis. Sony CEO warns of technical challenges in cloud gaming, and warns that technical problems persist for cloud gaming. And so a couple of quotes from this article from the CEO of Sony there, Kenichiro Yoshida-san. I think cloud itself is an amazing business model, but when it comes to games, the technical difficulties are high. And the dark time for cloud gaming had been an issue for Microsoft as well as Google. But it was meaningful that we were able to use those quieter hours for AI learning. I'll get into that, and I might have flubbed the quote there, but I'll get into that. I think quieter is added by the author. But yeah, like the broad strokes of this is, despite the in an interview that the Financial Times got with him, they're basically saying that despite the industry's attempts to promote and grow cloud gaming, which has a huge valuation, a very small piece of the pie, but a huge valuation, many users remain hesitant to switch from traditional consoles or their high-end gaming PCs. Yoshida also highlighted the inefficiencies of cloud gaming servers and discussed the use of Sony's use of artificial intelligence to optimize their games or gameplay during quieter hours. And of course, he refrained on commenting about Microsoft's planned acquisition of Activision. But that's to be expected. That those are things that happen behind closed doors in these kind of boardrooms, not in these interviews. So when they're talking about technical challenges, they're talking about latency issues that are there with cloud gaming. They're talking about, when they're talking about Sony's use of AI, they have an AI agent called GT Sophie, which they've used to optimize Gran Turismo. So like, basically one of the things that's happening is that you have a bunch of servers for cloud gaming, and you have all these servers that can give you all this capacity, but gameplay and that kind of demand happens in peaks. So your servers will be really under load during peak, but when it's off peak, you have a bunch of capacity that you're not using, and that's kind of wasteful. And so what they're doing is when they have downtime, they're using that excess capacity to run their models, their AI models or AI agents, who then look at the gameplay and analyze and crunch and see what they need to do to make the games better. And when they're talking about latency and potential lag and all that kind of stuff, gamers demand fast response times, and it's a really hard challenge to solve because of physics, because of how far away the servers can be and how much time it takes for a signal to transfer between where you are and where that server is, and how your internet might interact with that, all that. So yeah, and that's a major barrier for this industry to kind of get over. Sony has invested in cloud gaming, and they were one of the first movers in the market. So in 2012, they got in by buying a cloud gaming company called Gaikai for $380 million. I assume that's US. In 2012, and then they later on bought the technologies of the Gaikai rival OnLive. And then in 2014, they launched their cloud gaming subscription service and have subsequently upgraded it and kind of packaged it into PS Plus Premium. But analysts, or at least financial analysts, when they look at this, they still don't think that Sony has capitalized on their early bet to establish themselves as a leader. And as I say, there were no comments were given on Microsoft acquisition, but it's funny to me that on the one hand they're out there saying they're out there doing whatever they can to influence regulators to block the deal, and then on the other they're trying to pump out their own cloud service stuff and gain a first mover advantage in that market before anyone else can. And I can't comment too much further on what the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission in the US, which is the regulator, regulator for a bunch of things, including mergers and acquisitions. I can't say too much about what their position is specific to Sony and Sony PlayStation, but I just hope that the stance that they're taking against Microsoft and Xbox, the stance that they're taking against M&A in general, which is a strict one, I hope that they do the same thing with Sony whenever Sony comes around trying to establish themselves as a mainstay in cloud gaming. And that goes, I hope that the UK Competition and Markets Authority does the same thing. Because they're out here, Sony is out here trying to grow and get into cloud gaming just like everyone else. But separate out cloud gaming from this acquisition that Microsoft is trying to pull off, because those two are separate things. It's just that the for whatever reason, the Competition and Markets Authority conflated the two to try and just get some baseline thing out there, some rationale that they could crank together that would say like, oh yeah, we can't let this happen. And that is it for the news. And that means that's it for the show. It's done. We did it. Gosh, it's been like 3 weeks since I've been out here. Let's play the outro. Up next, some more Diablo 4. But it might be time to say goodbye to the Diablo 4 on stream anyway. I'll keep playing, but I don't know that I want to keep streaming it. I'll get into Street Fighter 6 soon, because there is a whole bunch of stuff to show off there and that I've been excited for. Also, I've been checking out No Clips Patreon stuff, by the way. If you haven't heard of them, go check them out. They do video game documentaries. They're really cool. They're doing Stunt Derby, which is really cool. So check that out. It's a car throwback Stunt Derby game. That's going to do it. Thank you so much, as always. Take care. As always, enjoy your gaming, and I'll catch you on the flip side.